this morning here in Orange County, California. And a little bit later, I have some, presentation slides for you, some visual things. And it's raining here, which it doesn't rain very often, so that's a good sign. And so I'm here to talk about the church, Greek school, and the ministry of the Greek school specifically, and how to grow that. I have often, especially in the last couple of years, had many priests and people who run programs call me on the phone or meet with me and say, "Can you please tell me how you're doing this? What is happening?" The first claim is that, of course, it's not just me. We have a beautiful team of people here, but I want to start with two stories that I think reflect Greek school and its future in America and in the church. I will start by saying this. In America, and maybe in some other places, maybe like in Canada or Australia, the Greek language and the Greek culture is very tied to the church. There has not been a successful break off, not that you would want one, but there hasn't been a successful break off of Greek culture and language outside the church in America. And so that situation brings us together. And there are those who feel frustrated by that and feel that, why cannot we advance the Greek language and culture outside the church without the church's involvement? And there are those who see that as a good thing because they like the umbrella of the church and how it serves families, and so they think it's a good thing. Nonetheless, we are tied to one another. And I have heard in the last couple of years, I've heard a few metropolitans and I've heard a few bishops greet their priests. These are in priest meetings, and they've said some things that have bothered me about Greek school. One was, "Please don't close down your Greek school." And I'm thinking to myself, my gosh, is that a worry? And others have said, "Please support your Greek school." So maybe people feel they're not being supported. And I think that a lot of Band-Aids have been put on in the past. Let's try this or that, just throw something in there to change the course of Greek school and other ministries that are Greek cultural ministries. There seems to be sometimes a lack of growth in those, and some of them are even shrinking. Of course, you might be in a parish right now where it's in a place in the United States where the Greek school is thriving, the cultural programs are thriving, and the congregation is relatively Greek, still 80% Greek or Greek Americans. And that's why it's good to look at the West Coast, because the West Coast is probably the future of the demographics and geographics of the church. We don't have parishes, very few parishes anymore, that are 80 or 90% people who are of Greek ancestry. They might be half Greek or quarter Greek. They might be converts. And so I look at all that as an opportunity, believe it or not. There is a huge opportunity to grow the Greek language and the Greek culture and the church and the stewards of the church all together. And so this is a story about when I came here. I came here from St. Sophia Cathedral. There were 2 priests and 1,500 families. It was an inner city church with all sorts of dynamics. And when I came here, Metropolitan Ierasimos asked me if I would come here and to be a full-time priest here and grow the church and the ministries. And when I came here, there were about 35 active families, as Tessie said. And there was a Greek school here that had 8 or 9 students. And that Greek school was losing, $4,000 to $6,000 a year. And I never really liked that term lose, because it implied that we weren't investing in something, that we were paying for something that maybe we didn't feel like we should pay for. And I went to one of my first parish council meetings here, and of course, a very small church with 35 families. We are considered a mission church. We don't own our own building. We're renting and hoping to buy land and a building and all those wonderful things. And so I was very concerned that now the Greek school was in a meeting with the parish council, and it was going to be decided if we were going to continue with the Greek school and the Greek language and cultural program of this church. And so as the people talked in that meeting, they brought up the finances. They also brought up, the participation. They didn't feel that it went along with, the future of the church. In my own eyes, I kept thinking to myself, this is an amazing opportunity. We already have something very small, but it's a start. And they had asked me to close the Greek school and say, let's, focus our energies and our efforts on other things that we feel could be more successful, which again bothered me a great deal, because I was thinking, why would we get rid of such a wonderful program? I didn't know too much about what had went on because I was new, but I was worried about that. And so I had told the parish council, look, this is what we need to do. The Greek school, believe it or not, the Greek language and cultural program here is going to be an amazing and vibrant ministry of St. Basil's Church. And it's going to be one of the reasons why families love to be here and call this their home church. And I don't think a lot of people believed me in that meeting, but they're all really wonderful people, had worked really hard to keep this church afloat without a full-time priest. And they said, yes, we'll continue with the Greek school under your direction, and we will see what it can be. What they didn't know, what a lot of parish council knows, is there's actually a method to building up a ministry in the church, to building up a program. There are things that work and don't work, and they're not what I call band-aids. A lot of times we look at a Greek school academy or a cultural program or a youth ministry program, and we evaluate it on its issues and its problems, and then we say, what band-aid can we throw at it? Let's do this thing, and let's do that thing. And if those things don't work, then people lose their interest, and it fades away. So now we have a Greek school program that is extremely vibrant and a big part of this parish. We have about 60% of our children here who are going to Greek school and learning the Greek language and culture through the Greek Academy that we have here. Now, if you're from, certain parts in the United States where, the neighborhood across the street from the church is 80% Greek, that might not be a big deal. But here in Southern California, in a parish that has maybe, 30 to 40, maybe 30% of the people have two parents that are from Greek ancestry, maybe, and a good half of them are either half Greek or less, and some of them have no Greek, ancestry at all. That's a big deal. That's a big deal in Southern California when there isn't a big push, sometimes and even demand for a program like that. And so now we have 40 children coming to our Greek school, and we have made the program financially stable. And on top of that, we are now working on a summer program in Greece that's going to focus on Greek language, Greek culture, and Greek faith. It's going to be for people from our church families. I'm working on this with Tessie and Elias, and I really hope that it happens. But that's how far we've come, where we might be having either every year or every other year in Greece for a couple weeks, teaching Greek language, culture, and the Orthodox faith all together mixed into one. And I believe over and over again, God wants us to be together. God wants us to be together for his reasons, because it's really hard to separate from the church. I've had many people who are directors of programs come to me and say, can't I just take this program out of the church? And I'm going to address that later. If I could just start my own nonprofit and have my Greek cultural program over here, or my Greek language program over here, or some other program that they feel isn't a ministry of the church. And this is always a danger. Most of those programs, if they did get a release from the church and started their own nonprofit and their own program, have died within a couple years. And so we are tied to one another, and I think it is God's doing. I believe it. Now I'm going to tell you another story that is a story about a failure. And that story comes from St. Catherine's in Redondo Beach. They have a beautiful ministry night there. And that ministry night happens once a month. All the families go with their children. They all eat dinner together. Then they all break up by age groups. They have discussions on the faith and other presentations. And then they all do something really exciting and fun. And every year when the priest is out of town, he asked me to cover for him. He asked me to be part of the night and lead it. So I would do that for him. And I thought, wow, this is such a really great program that I want to do this when I, get my own church to lead. And of course, I did that, and I brought it here. And the first time we did it, it was fantastic. Everybody came. The second month when we did it, I was here with 50 hot dogs and one of my youth workers named Irene. And we sat here together with 50 hot dogs, and nobody came. And nobody came. And we laugh about it now. We're like, well, we're still working on those 50 hot dogs. But the point is there has to be something different than just injecting something to make it work. And that's what this presentation is all about. It's about making Greek school a ministry and following the methods and practices that work. That night that didn't work, it didn't work because we didn't do all the things that you need to do before to bring that ministry up to the point of being successful and vibrant. We just decided we're just going to throw it in there and everybody's going to want it. But it's much more than that. And so I'm talking about ministry, and I'm going to ask Tessie to put up my, I put a little PowerPoint presentation together, and I'm going to look at this youth slide, and I want to just explain to everybody what we're talking about. So this is a session that's going to be talking about youth ministry and making Greek school part of that youth ministry program, which has equaled great success in this church. And not just for the Greek language, but also for the Greek dance. When I came here, there was 5 or 6 dancers, maybe 7. Now we have 45 to 50 people in Greek dance and 4 different teams that compete at the annual FDF. We used all these same practices. And so what do I mean by youth ministry? What I mean is relational youth ministry. This entire presentation is about relationships and how we build them in the church and how they equal success. When I say relational youth ministry, first is that it's under the umbrella of the church and her ministries. This is something that you want. We don't want to start thinking in our mind, I'm so frustrated by having to deal with the administration or the parish council or the priest of the church, because the umbrella of the church is what attracts many families. They like to do things under the umbrella of the church. Yet sometimes we feel like it would just be easier to not have to deal with the church. And maybe it would be, but it would also, in my opinion, shrink the ministry to the point where it might not exist anymore. And that, a good ministry program, and I wrote it here, produces a lasting and positive influence on the lives of children, volunteers, and leaders. And so when I came here, the parish council and leaders like Tessie and my Sunday school director and other people, we started thinking about what will be the experience of people who walk into this church for families, and what will those families want to participate in, and what will those children be a part of, and what do we want them to take away. And this is what we want. We want the lives of their children, the people who are volunteering. We want the leaders. We want their lives to be affected in a positive way, and maybe even change their life for the better. And now we start to say, hey, there's some serious goals here. This isn't just about trying a different bunch of programs and trying to find out what the demands of the people are, and so we're going to be like a product and meet their demand. Like we're always going to change because people have changing tastes. And lastly, it was to build up faith and personal self-worth for children through relationships with teachers, volunteers, leaders, and various ministry programs. And so what has been successful here is building up ministry teams that have great volunteers and great teachers and great directors that have personal relationships with the children and the parents that they're dealing with, and through that they've been able to accomplish many great things. And we'll go to the next slide because I want to get to the next one, the second. So these are the questions that I'm asked the most, and I have been asked to speak at many parishes. I just spoke at another parish this year, and I have another parish that wants me to come and speak to their ministry team. And I use the word Greek school, but it could be anything that says, well, what does all this have to do with Greek school? That's a great question. What does this have to do with Greek school? And that's the question that I get all the time. And I think that people should ask that question. And I think that the priest and the parish council and the leaders of programs, they should know what the answer is. Okay. So here's the things that people have told me. And this is one that I get at Greek dance all the time. I say, Father, they say, I do the program, Father, and you do the church stuff over there. And I love that phrase, the church stuff. In other words, don't bother me. I'm the expert. I'm an expert at teaching, Greek language, or I'm an expert at Greek culture, or I'm a great dance instructor. So you brought me in here. You want me. You recognize a talent. But let's keep you, the Father, and the priests and the ministries over there. Okay. Here's another thing that people say when I say, well, I'd like to get involved with, trying to form your program as more of a ministry of the church. And they say, well, I can give you some time to speak to the kids once we're done. Once again, it's this very separation type of attitude, which says, I am worried and fearful that the priest maybe get too involved with my curriculum and what I'm doing here. He wants to make this into some kind of church thing. Therefore, I think I'll give him some time when I'm finished. Or one of probably the biggest thing I get with people is they say, Father, I'm not a youth minister. I'm a teacher, or I'm a dance instructor, or I'm a chaperone. I didn't sign up to be a youth minister. And I used to ask that question all the time. Almost every time I speak, I say, who here in this room, these are people who run youth ministry programs, I say, consider themselves a youth minister or someone who leads a youth ministry. And I usually get no hands or one hand, which is most of the time the priest. And then I say, what about God? I said, how many people here think God considers them a youth minister? And I usually get about half. People aren't exactly sure. And so, but really this is about ministry. It's about making a difference in our church, in our programs. It's about success and vibrancy of our ministries and growth. And it's definitely about not getting rid of a program because we think it's unsuccessful, just because we feel like, people don't want it anymore. I think that there has to be a different criteria on how we focus on what a good ministry is. And so I'm going to ask Tessie to go to the next slide because I want to remind us all of something. And these are the things that I teach people or bring up to people, no matter who I'm talking to, whether it be Greek dance or whether it be the altar boys. We are all under the ministry of the church. It says, Jesus said, I am the vine, you are the branches. If a man remains in me and I in him, he will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And so this should tell us that God is with us, and that when we are looking at ourselves as part of the vine, as branches of the vine, God is going to make sure that our work will bear much fruit. And I think sometimes we forget that. I think sometimes we feel that like I'm working hard, I'm doing all this stuff because I care about it, or I care about the church or the ministry, and we don't realize that we're being called by God to be part of the greater thing. And so I'm going to go to the next frame, and this is really about how I see it. And I'm going to tell another story. It's a marketing story. So you might remember the fast food restaurant. There's a fast food restaurant in America, if you're not already, called Wendy's. It's kind of like a McDonald's. It's probably like the third largest, cheeseburger chain in America. And the owner used to always be worrying about market share and how he's going to grow his product and how he's going to make his restaurant more successful. And whenever he would meet with his executives, they would always include, we need to change the product. We need to change it. We need to turn it into something else. We need to offer something different. And he said whenever they would tell him that, he would get in a car and go through a drive-through at one of his restaurants that were across the country, order food and eat it all. And he said, and he would enjoy the food so much, he would know in his heart that the answer isn't to change the product, but the answer was to find a different way to promote it, a different way to get people interested in it, a different way to raise awareness of it, and maybe a way to show people the benefits of it. And so, that restaurant chain is still here. I look at that sometimes on how we think of the church. In my opinion, there is no better attraction, no better thing that you can offer families in the church. There's nothing better than the ministries and the liturgical services and the community of the church. I have asked over and over again, Father, how do we compete? How do we compete with soccer? We used to have Greek school here on Saturday mornings until half of them couldn't come because of sports, but they would show up in their jerseys, right? How do we compete with cheerleading and music and acting and all these things that the kids are in? People felt it was some kind of competition that we had to constantly change everything we do because we're competing with these outside forces. But what I found out is baseball is baseball, and ballet is ballet, and all, and they have their place in life, but none of those things can compete with what the church offers. And so we don't really need to change what the church offers. What we need to do is work in the church on our ministries to build them up. And God gave us a great intellect. He gave us creativity. He gave us wonderful people, and He's going to provide for our church. And so when I came here and I said, we're going to make Greek school, our Greek academy, a very important part of this church ministry, I meant it. And what I really wanted to happen is I wanted people to see that when they came into the church, families came into the church, and we're attracting a lot of families. Those 100 new families that have come to this church, I would say 80% of them are family with children that are either little or mid-aged children, 10 years old, 8 years old, some with teenagers. And they have all told us the same thing. We are coming here because of the ministries that you offer families and children. And so this is a beautiful thing that's happening here. And like I said, I'm not here to take the credit for that, because there's an amazing team of people that are really working on all these things. And we have the same worries and issues that everyone. And if you look at the second thing I said, God will always take care of His church and provide people, talent, and resources. When something is a ministry of the church, God is going to bless it, okay? And He's going to make sure that we have what we need to run it. Our Greek school was losing money, and I don't like it when a ministry goes to a parish council meeting, and then people around that parish council meeting are faced with whether to continue that ministry or not. To me, that sometimes is the kiss of death. And I'm not saying that the parish council is bad, but everybody has their talent, and parish council's talent are administrating a church and helping run and lead a church. They might not be experts at a ministry. They might not know the details and the hard work and the challenges. And so they can look at it on a spreadsheet and try to make a managerial, decision. Your ministry should never be in a parish council meeting and having someone to decide if you continue or not. And really, we shouldn't, have to have our metropolitans and archbishops ask us to keep our Greek schools open, because we're missing a huge opportunity when we do not look at this in, like, as I say, in my eyes, I look at Greek school and I say, this is an amazing thing for our church. And as long as you can work with the people, it could be a true ministry. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit because it's coming up. But I wrote here, a Greek school that is truly part of the ministry of the church, experience endless possibilities and growth and success. And that, where I said truly part of a ministry, I don't mean that the priest comes out and says, we have a beautiful Greek school, does a blessing, does an ayasmo, and doesn't, that you don't see him for 6 months. And then maybe he shows up one day, and says hi to the children, or he just feels like he did justice to the Greek school ministry because he told everybody we have one and you should sign your kids up. That's not what truly being part of the ministry of the church is. Truly being part of the ministry means that all the ministries are working together for a common goal. And that common goal is led by the leaders of the church, which are the priests, the parish council members, and the directors and workers of each ministry. And that common goal has to be what you work for. The things that have caused success here did not happen overnight. You know that from the story that I told you about the program I just tried to interject. It didn't work because it wasn't based on relationships. It wasn't based on knowing our people and building a common goal for a ministry. It was just, let me throw something at them, and it didn't work. Yet a Greek school that was struggling is now one of the strongest ministries we have. And that's because Tessie and those who run the Greek school have been open to helping build their ministry with the input from the priest, the input of the leaders of the church, and we have respected them and made sure that we don't overstep our boundaries because they have great talent and great, fortitude of what needs to be done, and we don't step on Tessie's toes and those things, but we're all working together. And the growth, one of the things that I don't really think any of us should do is say a program is successful based on how many people it has. You don't want to do that. You could have a Greek school that has 100 kids in it, but 2 years ago they could have had 200 kids. And so you could think, wow, we have 100 kids, and then you don't address the problem. And this is what happened to the other 100 kids in Greek school. And so we have to just think about this when we have a ministry. God is the one who supplies the growth, and we take care of all the details. And so I put this from 1 Corinthians chapter 3. St. Paul said, I planted, okay? Apollos watered, but God supplied the growth. And so St. Paul looked at the ministry of the church like a garden, okay? And the growth came from God, from all the things that God did. And we're called to take care of that garden. We're called to plant and water that garden. And what does that mean, to plant and water? That means your talent. That means your actual talent that you are giving towards Greek school or towards a program, either a cultural program or a religious program. That's what that means. And we can't just focus on it, because I grew up my church was really small when I grew up. We had 6 people in the youth group when we were there when I was 17. But to me, it was a great success because all 6 of those kids are still Orthodox Christians. They either married or their person converted to Orthodoxy that they married. They're raising their children in the church. And to me, it was a great success because somebody there reached out to us as children and built a relationship with us. And through that relationship that we had with those leaders, we learned about our church and God and our culture to the point where it's so important that we couldn't imagine not giving it to our own children. Let us go to the next slide. And, I know that Tessie wants to leave some time for questions. I hope you guys have some questions. So what are the things that we need to do, first? Like I said, when you decide to make something a ministry, you need to think that we need to have a 5-year goal. We need to have a 1-year goal. This is not about taking everything that you've heard today and say, well, we're just going to do all that. That will probably destroy whatever you built. This is about meeting with your people and saying, let's make a plan. We had a plan, when I first came here. I've been here 9 years. We had a plan which we developed about 6 months to a year after I was here, to say in 5 years, these are the things that we want. And we will do these following things in order to make those things happen. And that's what we did. And Like I said, it's not just the Greek school that's growing, all of them are growing. So what's the number one thing that I see as getting in our way? And that is, in my opinion, the Greek Orthodox Church in general, when it comes to ministry, has a very, very difficult time abandoning failure and running with success. And we spend so much time trying to revamp. We might spend 80% of our ministry time trying to revamp things that have failed and spend only 10 or 20% of our time on things that are successful. And that is very difficult. I know we're a very old church with a lot of great traditions, and maybe that's why we don't like to abandon things. But when I went to St. Sophia, we had lots of challenge. It was an inner city church, and people had to drive past another Greek Orthodox church to get to that church. And so Father Bacchus, who was a great teacher to me, he used to say, we always have to find a way of thinking outside the box. And one of the things I asked him, I said, well, can we get rid of all the things that don't work? Because they take so much of our time and energy. And can we take the things that work and build from them? So in that particular church, Greek dance was a pretty good ministry. It had 45 kids. And what they used to do is just say, well, let's just leave it alone. It's good. Let's work on all the things that aren't working, even though some of them aren't working for a lot of reasons that we can't even change. And I said, well, you know, Father, I think what we need to do is put all our money and effort into the Greek dance and the Sunday school, because they're the most successful programs here. And through that, other things will happen. And that's what's happened here. Okay, we got rid of all the ministries that were not successful, that were taking 80% of our time. And we said, we have a Greek school, we have a Sunday school, we have a Greek dance program. Instead of just saying we have that, we tend to say, oh, in order to be a successful church, we have to add more stuff. I said, let's put all our energy and effort into that. And in Los Angeles, when we did that, the Greek dance program rose from 45 to like almost 100 kids. But after that happened, all these other ministries started popping up because we follow these methods. So you're going to get a team together. You're going to establish your youth ministry goals, and you're going to meet and train people. We can go to the last slide. And these are for you. You know, we don't have to go everything, but one of the biggest issues and challenges in America in Greek school is the support that comes from the priest and the parish council and the teachers and the directors and the work they do. And I'm not going to go through all that for you, but I put this here to show you sort of what's on everyone's mind. The teachers are working hard. They have personal lives. They have jobs. The directors are working hard to make sure there's teachers, and they're working with the parish council and the priest. The priests are overwhelmed. They're working 55 to 70 hours a week. They don't always want to spend time working on a ministry, and sometimes they don't feel like a Greek or cultural program has anything to do with ministry. And so those are the challenges that we face, and those are the things that we have to overcome. The last slide is just some motivation for all of us, which is, you know, God has called us. I call them the ABGs because I figured people would remember that, you know, because we say ABC, ABG. Answer your calling from God. Always be training and growing and meeting, and give them faith and love through the program, and offer your talent to the church, and build a relationship with kids and other leaders in the church, and you'll start to see great success in what you're doing. So the last slide is just my information. You know, obviously we could talk a lot about these things, and I figured, well, if people want to talk to me or pick my brain, they're more than welcome to contact me at any time. So I don't know if there's any questions, you know, but if there are, I would love to answer them.
Father, thank you so much for your presentation. It was very interesting, very important about showing the structure of the Greek school and the whole community there in San Juan Capistrano. Thank you once again. Well, we have some questions by Tony Alexis. I'm going to read his message entirely. First of all, congratulations, Father Tragus, on supporting and building such a successful Greek school program. What are your thoughts about the introduction of the Greek language, culture, religion at earlier ages? Will the parish in similar size benefit from an immersion daycare preschool program for ages 2 to 5?
I think it's a very good idea, and we have done a little bit of that. One thing that happens is when you have, okay, I'm just going to tell you, Tessie's our Greek school director, but she was at our youth program, with our teenagers running an event. She also works with my Sunday school director. We have something called Vacation Church School, which is for very young children. And because we all work together, I incorporated the Greek language into that, because sometimes they're so little, maybe they can't sit through class. Maybe it's hard to get teachers because they feel it's babysitting. But anytime I have those young kids together, I have a way of incorporating Greek language. And so when we had our Vacation Church School, which is in the summer, and they rotate and learn different things, I had told Tessie I want to have part of that being part of the Greek language, because our people accept it as a ministry of the church. They were more than happy to have the children start learning Greek very early. There are some challenges with, teaching and how much you can accomplish, but I would say that it's always good to start early, and you don't have to put the pressure on to have a full school for a little child, but there are many opportunities throughout the year to start introducing them to Greek language and culture. And to me, I say start it as early as possible, but work together to do it. Don't just rely only on the Greek school director to do that.
Thank you so much, Father. Also, some other attendees asking if is it possible to share your slides so they can see them and probably share them with their students. It's up to you if you are giving them their allowance and share the slides.
Of course. I mean, I want you to take all those things, the things that I talked about, many of them I learned, some of them I came up with myself. We need to copy. We're not here to reinvent the wheel. So you take everything, use it for what you want. I would have liked to put something better together, but I have 4 little children, and when I was doing that, I had children jumping on top of me. But please take everything we have and share it.
We're going to share it afterwards with the record of the whole presentation. And one last question by Fevronia Soumakis is, first of all, she's saying thank you for your positive and proactive work. She would like to hear more about your Greek school teachers, their training and the support to the community offers them, vis-a-vis salaries, etc. Thank you. Right.
Well, we do pay our Greek school teachers, and we do try to come up with a pay that is good for their education and what they're offering. And I have talked to Tessie about that. And once again, this is why it's so important to have the parish council, the Greek school director, and the priest working together, because I cannot approve finances. I can only suggest, and then it has to be voted on. And so you don't want to have a big argument over like how much we should pay someone. We should pay someone what they're worth, and it raises the value of your school, because you have a better school when you do that. So we make it a point to pay them the best we can. They are part-time because we don't have a full-time school. So that's, the first part of your question. What was the second part of the question?
The second part has to do with their training and the support the community offers them vis-a-vis salaries, etc.
Right. So the training is, we have an orientation. Tessie does some of the training herself, but one of the things is people are so busy and they don't want more meetings. So I tend to piggyback things on top of the other. And so our archdiocese has a safety program for working with children that it's mandatory. You have to do that in every parish. And so when I present that safety program to my Greek school teachers, my Sunday school, everybody that works with youth has to take the safety thing of working with children. Okay. I don't just leave it at that. I add the ministry training. So we start off with a half an hour. It doesn't have to be long. Don't give people long messages. You just do it throughout the year. So I take the opportunity to remind people why we're here, what our goals are, what the goals of the ministries are, and how it affects everybody here. And they're already meeting for something else. And so we have ongoing training, and don't try to just knock people out with 4-hour meetings. Tessie's always training ongoing. Any opportunity we have to talk to them for a half an hour, 20 minutes, to inspire them to buy into the ministry culture that we have put here, I say you do as much as you can. it doesn't have to be all in one weekend or all in one sitting.
Perfect. We'll close with a Q&A with a comment by Katerina Economou saying that congratulations on your excellent presentation. And at the end of the day, we have the same goal to keep our youth in our communities and preserve the Greek language and culture. Bravo.
Thank you, Katerina.
Thank you, Father. Thank you all. We need to end our session here, and I would welcome you in the main session. I'm going to share real quick the program. You know where to go, but basically you need to log into, let me see real quick, here. In the main session right here, where κυρία Κεραμέως, Υπουργός Παιδείας και Θρησκευμάτων, θα μιλήσει σε λίγα λεπτά. Σας ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ και μετά μπορείτε να επανέλθετε στο δωματίο, στην αίθουσά μας για την ομιλία της Δόκτωρ Μαρία Καμιλάκη. Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ. Thank you, Father Bill, and we'll see you.
Thank you all. Yasas, everyone.